Greetings, adventurers. Have you ever had a problem player that you can't quite put your finger on what specifically is wrong, but they constantly make the table worse for wear? Sometimes it's important to know that someone just isn't a good fit for the table and cut ties with them sooner than later, as we'll see in this next story. I'd like to preface that this is a very short and sweet style rant from the writer here, and they seem to be going through a lot, but I think they articulate some pretty good lessons. Today's treasure is called, well, after 30 years of TTRPG, I finally had to remove a problem player. Let's jump right into it. Therapeutic rant. I just started a several-month pause on gaming to deal with life stuff, but my last official act as founder of my TTRPG group was to boot a problem player so my friends could power on without having to deal with an issue I'm at least somewhat responsible for, having lacked the courage to pull the band-aid off sooner. I don't want to shit on any specific style of play, people like what they like. But if I'm talking about a style of play being a problem, you can probably guess problem player was a power gamer and the rest of us are not. I want to emphasize power gamer means all the associated negative traits and stereotypes that come with it. We've had optimizers and min-maxers before, but those other players were creative, cooperative, generous, etc. Problem player went out of his way to dominate every encounter, main character style. A recent glaring example was an insistence on rolling for a check that another player had just successfully made. He would talk over other players, try to micromanage how other players played their characters, and would speed through any role playing whatsoever, including critical investigative set pieces, often with a brash anyway or okay, and often treated out of character social interactions with the same cavalier disdain. Problem player also had trouble accepting loss of any sort, and indeed any situation where their character was not the biggest badass in the room. This includes frequent rules lowering, getting visually out of character upset when his character suffered even minor injury, and going so far as to veto game systems based exclusively on the fact that he doesn't like to lose. Any system he didn't know he could optimize his character into an undefeatable killing machine was off the table. It should come to no surprise that the problem player was a shit role player and was only capable of playing edgy loners with a mysterious past. In 3 years and 3 campaigns across 2 different systems, problem players' character personalities were completely indistinguishable from and interchangeable with one another. Nothing encapsulates problem player more than the exchange at the start of our last campaign. When the GM set up an opportunity for the characters to tell each other a little bit about their characters, I'm a rogue. Crickets, period. That was it. It was not until the end of the second session that we learned his character in this campaign was a woman. The most backstory I ever got from him was his first campaign with us. His character had been the first mate aboard the legendary flagship of the most feared and dreaded pirate fleet in the cosmos. Now he's seen the light and he's trying to change his ways, but his betrayal of his oldest friend, commander of the pirate fleet, means an armada is now searching the galaxy high and low, hell-bent on exacting revenge. Let's table the fact that he abandoned a life of crime and mass murder to take up, from the way he went on to play his character, a life of crime and mass murder, and remind ourselves that this was his background for a first-level character. And now he clearly wants me to incorporate this backstory into the campaign. F you. I could go on and on and on. So clearly at this point in the rant, it's established that there's a lot of things that are going wrong with this player, a lot of points of contention between them and the rest of the party. He'll go on to try to contextualize and kind of make concessions on why he hesitated for so long. But the reality is, regardless of even if there's a good reason, you don't have to sit through and play bad D&D with people who are just very argumentative and very confrontational like this. So I just want to point that out before you hear the second half of the story. I'm curious if your guys' opinion will change a little bit after you hear the second half. But the reality is, even if the person's perfectly nice, it could be as simple as they always show up late, they always reschedule, they're not really too invested. Very innocent, very non-confrontational things can be reason enough to boot them. Sometimes people are just not a good fit or expecting something way different from the game that you're willing to offer as a DM, and that's totally okay to cut ties. Now, talk to them, be civil, communicate before you do it, but in reality, it's okay to part ways. Anyways, here's the second half of the story. I could defend myself by saying I wanted to be a nice guy, wanted my table to be open to everyone. I could say I suspect he might be on the spectrum, which might explain why he is worse at reading social cues than anyone else I've gamed with, or even anyone else I've ever met. When I, near tears, explained to the group I needed to take several months off from gaming to focus on my partner's cancer-related health crisis and surgeries and care for our child, his response was to crack a joke about whether the wife could let me keep playing. It was so offensive to me, I had to wonder if he could even help himself, even capable of understanding basic human emotion and interaction, because surely no neurotypical person would react in such a way. I could point out that it wasn't all negative, that there were moments of, if not good role-playing, at least shrewd gaming, that his encyclopedic, near-photographic memorization of the rules came in handy, and that he even made me laugh a handful of times over the 3 years we gamed together. I could mention that I did talk to him at least once early on about his habit of suggesting how other players could manage combat, down to what weapons they should use and who they should attack, and the tone he took was a turnoff, and that he course-corrected minimally for a little while, and that there were good days and bad days, and on the best days his dynamic with the rest of the table was almost passable for friendship. But there was just too many bad days, so many bad days. The default was bad days, and life is too short to game at a table with a problem player who suffocates everyone's joy and imagination with the insistence of treating every single session like it was a competitive first-person shooter. You are free, problem player. There are other groups out there who enjoy the style of play, who wouldn't grow tired by the shallowness of your exclusive kill shit and get all the treasure character motivations, who perhaps will be more patient with whatever affliction it is that you have. You are not the worst person I've ever met, or even ever gamed with. That would have been too easy. I would have booted you immediately. You found the perfect balance of being annoying enough to sully the experience for everyone without touching any explicit third rails, and being pitiful enough that no one had the heart to boot you despite all of us desperately wanting to for a very long time. Well done? Anyone still reading this, problem players do not have to cross any explicit red lines before you ask them to leave. They don't have to be sexist or racist or homophobic. They don't even have to directly personally insult you. All that's needed is for them to distract from the fun you and the rest of the party get from gaming. No one is perfect, but once the bother they bring to the table outweighs the benefit, sayonara. My last 3 years of gaming has included some of the best TTRPGers I've had the pleasure to game with in the 3 decades, and you. And it's time to fish the turd out of the punch bowl. My biggest regret is putting my friends through this by not having the courage to pull the plug sooner. Indeed, inviting you to the table at all is the one thing I wish I could change in 30 years of gaming. Bravo, you will live on in infamy. And there concludes our story for the day, and although he added some factors that made the person a little more sympathetic or understandable on why they acted that way, the truth was illustrated pretty well that everyone wanted them gone. They just didn't have a good enough reason to kick them outright and feel justified. But the fact of the matter is, even if the person was completely in the right and the party was in the wrong morally or whatever, the fact is that as the odd one out, and as someone who's unwilling to compromise, it would be best to part ways. Because truly, if you were the odd one out and everyone else was kind of like a little shady, treating you poorly, you would ideally want to leave anyways. I just want to commend the writer of the story for being able to articulate their rant very well at the end there. I think they're very kind, they're very fair about their frustrations, especially considering the context of what the person said about their wife in a time where he's probably very vulnerable. This problem player might very well find a group that totally enjoys doing what he likes doing in game. I'm sure they won't enjoy him talking over them and interrupting them, but you know, he is right in the sense that if it's a low roleplay campaign, very high power min-max, near death at any moment kind of combat encounters, it should be a better fit for him. But then again, the player will have to learn to play nice and not whine every time they take damage if he's in a game where, everyone's as overpowered as he is. That concludes the story for today. Make sure to like and subscribe, join the Discord to share your own stories, and we hope to see you in the next video. Farewell for now.